Welcome to weekly homilies at St. Joseph Parish in York, Pennsylvania.
We just heard the parable of the rich fool. And in this parable, Jesus speaks only to the disciples, reminding them that it is not persecution they should fear, but the judgment that is coming to them for those who do not acknowledge him. Suddenly, a man in the crowd shouts out to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." What does Jesus say? "Friend, who appointed me as your arbiter and judge?" But in another account, in another translation, he says, "Man, not friend," making the statement a stern warning as opposed to one that is more friendly. But this is the wrong question that the man asks Jesus. But how does Jesus respond? He doesn't respond to the man with an answer. He responds to the man with a parable. As we hear the rich man's speech in the parable, when he goes to say, when Jesus says, he asked himself, "What shall I do?" And then he goes into, "I know what I should do. I should build myself larger barns." And he goes through that whole statement there. If we count the number of I, me, my, mine, you, yourself, it comes to 11 times. Over 20% of the words this man uses are personal pronouns. This is a self-centered man who is the rich fool. It would seem he spent a lifetime building up his own ego, that he didn't even know that he was putting a gulf between himself and God. Do you also notice that whenever the rich fool is considering what to do with the abundant harvest, he only debates with himself in his own mind what he should do? This is what happens whenever we only consider in our mind what we should do. We are only debating amongst ourselves. This is not prayer. This is only debating amongst ourselves. And this only builds ourselves up. This does not do anything about discernment, about where God desires us to be. And so, when we allow ourselves to take control of everything, as this rich fool has done in the parable that Jesus says today, we take on burdens that are not ours to hold on to. While the rich man may not seem to be bothered by whatever he decides, building larger barns, he is building up his own pride, and as a result, he becomes more selfish and anger-filled. As Christians, we hear in the second reading that we are called to think of what is above, not what is of earth. The Father has created us and has given us the ability through our baptism not only to see the transitory, the things that are passing, but to seek the eternal. We receive the virtues of faith, hope, and love in our baptism, which direct us to the eternal. But how quickly our feeble minds turn to what we can see, to what we can touch, taste, and feel with our human senses, because these are what give us instant gratification. I know I succumb to this when I set specific time to pray the rosary, and somehow I find myself 5 minutes later watching a video on YouTube from Catholic News. But why do I do this? I do this because I want to see what Pope Leo did last night with the youth, and him talking to the youth, so that might help me with my homily today. I don't seek the eternal, I only worry about what is ahead of me. Does that make sense? So it's very hard for us to seek the eternal if we're worried and concerned about doing something directly ahead of us. And so, St. John the Merciful, a 7th century Orthodox patriarch of Alexandria, truly is an example of seeking what is above. Even before he was ordained a priest, he was zealous in fasting and in prayer. He considered it to be his responsibility to help those in need. When he began his time as patriarch, he asked that the number of poor in Alexandria be counted. And it turned out that there were 7,000 who were in need, who needed assistance. So what did he do? Every day, those 7,000 were taken care of by means of the church. One day, there was a beggar whom he saw in the street, and the beggar came to ask him. He said, "I need 6 gold coins." And the patriarch said, "Yes, I'll give you 6 gold coins." Then shortly thereafter, he changed clothes to make it seem like he was a different person, came up to him again and said, "I need 6 more gold coins." And he gave him 6 more gold coins. And a third time, he came up to him again. And he said, "I need more help." And the patriarch, John, said, "I'll give you 12 gold coins." And he gave him 12 gold coins. Why? Because he said that, first and foremost, perhaps he is Christ putting me to the test. Perhaps this beggar is Christ putting me to the test. How many times do we see a beggar and say, "I'm not even going to pray for him or her. They're just wasting their time"? How many times do we just ignore them, not even seeing the dignity that they have, because we're only concerned with ourselves, like the rich fool, who only debated amongst himself and was worried about his wealth? You see, we all desire heaven. There's no question about it. And the concept of seeking what is above is what we want to do. But if we spend all of our days seeking the earthly, seeking our own vain, selfish desires, we never will be ready to see God face to face when he comes for us. So we need to be prepared. How can we be prepared? We need to desire sacrifice. That's a hard word for each and every one of us. We need to desire sacrifice. How many times, as soon as we get into the car, do we turn on the radio as we go to work in the morning? And oftentimes what we hear is not very good talk, but impure talk on the radio. And then that's what fills our minds. How many times are we obsessed with scrolling on social media, and we are filled with gaining information about others or ourselves, taking pictures of ourselves, having lunch or having dinner with other people or with other food. I mean, I don't do this, but I understand that a lot of us do. But how often do we do this? This only builds up our own desires for ourselves. We need to sacrifice. Again, I don't like to do it. But if we don't sacrifice the earthly, how can we desire the eternal? Let us pray that we desire to seek Him and not our own selfish desires. Saint Joseph.
Thank you for listening to our weekly homilies at St. Joseph Parish in York, Pennsylvania. To learn more about us, visit us at www.sjy.org. Find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.